Exactly 1 month ago today, I discovered what life after Accenture looked like in the world of boutique consulting. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to reflect on the last month. In this video, we're going to talk about the company, the type of work, the clients, and the challenges I've faced to see if I recommend life in boutique consulting. Let's go. Firstly, let me set you some context. If you didn't already know, I quit Accenture after 4.5 years. And if you want to see why, video up here. And if you want to see the last day, video also up here. I quit the big corporate consulting race and swapped it for life in a tiny boutique consulting firm called Sisua. So what has boutique consulting really been like? Well, we're going to spend a bit of time on this lovely vacation reflecting with you guys. Firstly, let's talk about the actual company. So I swapped a company of 700,000 people to be employee number 12. So firstly, let's talk about the onboarding experience. Now, when you join a company this small, to be honest, the onboarding experience is much more personal. In Accenture, when I turned up on my first day, someone came to collect me, dumped me at a hot desk and said, "Best of luck." And this was so much more personal. In fact, I'd met everybody in the company in my first week, and I've had lots of time directly with the CEO. And that's been really great to understand the company vision and really feel like you're part of something much more intimate than a huge company. What's also really exciting about Sisua in particular is, and I promise you they haven't sponsored me to say this, but what's really exciting is everyone's come from a very diverse background. So there's lots of different experiences and we're really still learning from each other, and we're still very much on that kind of startup journey. So we're all kind of just learning together. Which means that even though my job title is the same, I was a manager in Accenture and I'm a manager here, what I'm finding is that my voice is bigger in this company because there's fewer people that it impacts, so the size of your impact is bigger. If that doesn't make sense, think about that for a second. In Accenture, I was kind of feeling like I was getting lost in the ether of just huge, big company. And here, I really feel like I'm part of something, and part of something pretty special. So let's talk a little bit about the clients. So Sisua is a boutique house that specialises in delivery consulting, so it's industry agnostic, a bit like Accenture actually. But in Accenture, I was aligned to Accenture technology, whereas here in Sisua, it doesn't really work like that. So I'm much more on the management consulting side, which, to be honest, I was at a point in my career where that's what I was looking for. So sure, there's some bits of technology, but it's much more people-focused management consultancy, which is definitely where I want to take my career right now. So I'm actually getting a chance to try a new industry. Back in Accenture, I was aligned to what's known as CMT, which is Communications, Media and Telco. And actually all my background is mostly in telco. So it's really nice to be able to try something completely different. And I'm actually in the e-commerce and retail space. So it's really great to be able to try something new, learn a new industry, but using skills I already have. And in terms of my role, this is actually probably my favourite role that I have ever had. And again, no one sponsored me to say this or asked me to say it. It just feels like a really great fit for the skills that I want to get versus the skills that I have. But one thing I am finding is that as part of a small consulting firm, we tend to be what's known as augmented resources. So this is where you go in and basically body shop a role in the client's team. Whereas in Accenture, we used to be part of an Accenture team and you would talk to the client, sure, daily, but you weren't really immersed into the client team, you were delivering a thing for them. In this role, I'm actually augmented as part of the client team, which initially was a big change for me. I'm used to a different kind of, almost like serving them dynamic, whereas this is really different and you really embrace being part of that team. There's always the risk that you then lose touch with your original firm, but actually in Sisua we meet regularly, we do loads of stuff, and we've got really active WhatsApp chats, so actually we've kind of found the best of both worlds. So finally, let's talk about the actual type of work that we do. Well, I touched on it a bit a moment ago, that the type of work we tend to do right now in Sisua, and I can't say if it's the same for all boutique firms if I'm honest, but certainly what we do is we are augmented resources as part of client teams. Whether that will change as we scale, let's see. But it's a slightly different way of working than you tend to see in the big corporate consultancies like Accenture, Deloitte, PwC, etc. And also, unlike a big corporate consultancy, boutiques tend to be very focused on a particular niche, and we're focused very much on delivery. So if you're somebody who has a good idea of what sort of thing they want to do, then a boutique is good for you. If you are somebody who wants to jump around and try some very, very different roles, then you probably need to go to a bigger consultancy first. And the thing about our type of work is that it tends to be sold based on relationships and who we know. I think sometimes clients buy the Accenture brand or the Deloitte brand, whereas when you're in a boutique consultancy, actually, because it's smaller and the brand tends to be less well known, actually what people are buying are people. So I've painted this really rosy picture, but has it all been plain sailing? No, of course it hasn't. So here are the challenges I've faced in my first month in boutique consulting. The first thing is network. So in Accenture, there were 700,000 people. Your network basically was Accenture. If you needed something, you could always find a person who knew a person who knew a person, and you could somehow find out the information. But the thing is, because in Sisua we are only, I think it's now 14 or 15 people, actually we're much more reliant on our outside network. And this is really alien for me. I've never had to do this before. And so we talk sometimes about, well, who do we know who can help, or who do we know who we can have a conversation with? And actually, I've realised that I'm pretty rubbish at the type of networking where you're maintaining ongoing professional relationships. I'm pretty rubbish at that, and it's something that I'm going to need to improve if I'm going to be able to cut the mustard in the boutique consulting world, I think. And this leads us nicely into a second challenge, which is that in Accenture, sometimes we'd be a bit punchy with what we'd promise to a client. And we knew that we could deliver because we had a big team and there were 700,000 people that we could pick to help us with. But because you're not working as part of a team, you're working as a pretty much lone wolf in the client environment, you have to be so careful not to overpromise to a client, because we haven't got some team somewhere that we're able to just work day and night to get it done, or be creative and find a way. So you have to be really careful right at the beginning not to overpromise. And to be honest, I am the queen of overpromising. This brings us nicely into the last challenge, which, look, I've come from Accenture, I was there for 4.5 years, I kind of know my way around consulting. Which means the induction that I had in boutique consulting was much smaller than when I was in Accenture. I think we did it in about 3 hours, and it was done by the CEO, and it was great, it was really good. But when I was in Accenture, we had a big 2-day induction. They hired this place in London, there were hundreds of us who were all new starters. And you basically just got sheep dipped in the Accenture way. And actually, if you're a grad, there's even more training. I think it's 2 weeks basic training, and then I think it's 2 more or 4 weeks special training. So my point being, at the end of your induction, if you are particularly new to consulting, you really have got great training. In boutique consulting, the facilities aren't really there for that. So if you come as a experienced hire, or like a semi-experienced hire, maybe you've graduated and you've got a couple of years experience, then I think boutique consulting, you'll be fine. But if you're coming straight out of university, it's a bit more in the deep end than probably you would feel comfortable with. So I would suggest that boutique consulting is great to come as an experienced hire. It's a really fresh way of looking at consulting, it's a really fresh challenge. But if you're watching this and you're in your last years of uni, I would suggest you go to a big consulting firm first, get your fundamental training, and then hop over the fence. And if you're hopping, let me know. So overall, was the move the right one? For me, yes, it absolutely was. I needed that fresh challenge, that smaller environment, and I was looking for a bit more of that kind of startup vibe. and sometimes it can feel a little bit chaotic. We're all learning along the way. If you're coming looking for perfectly polished processes and policies, then a startup, any startup, let alone boutique consulting, probably isn't the one for you. But for me, it was exactly the challenge I'm looking for. I have zero regrets. I'm really enjoying it and embracing it. Like I say, no one's paid me to say this. Just genuinely looking back, I've really fallen in love with consulting all over again. So these are my 1 month reflections, and what better place to do it than this beautiful sunny Algarve. I'm going to keep sharing the journey, sharing the things I'm learning. We're going to do a bit of rebrand on this channel and do some new different style videos, and I'm just going to keep sharing the journey in public. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like. Feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more content like this, and we'll see you on the next one. Could be here, could be back in England, who knows.